I have sent over 40 emails to City Manager Tom Barwin with solutions to problems. I'm not a critic like the Herald Tribune reporter. I have solutions. I'm a customer's man. If you don't take care of the customer, somebody else will. So my daughter, a Pineview graduate, comes back from CU Boulder, Colorado, tells me, Dad, I can't afford to live here. The rents are too high. And then I see this city, starting with the Professor Marbut that they hired to come up with the plan for the vagabonds. They can't stop themselves from hiring consultants and exacerbating the problem of housing, apartments. This nonsense where Benderson weaseled out of an affordable housing scheme, that was not going to help working people. So Pat Neal was going to sell 10% of the houses for less than the other. We need apartments. I've presented my plan, the 48-acre, totally underutilized, Bobby Jones executive course, less than 50 players a day, 2,000 apartments, with only 1,000 parking places, free buses, the trail from the railroad track directly to Payne Park. I couldn't care less about linking it to the Legacy Trail. That will be the nicest commuter trail in the country. Here's the Sperling formula for affordable apartments. The good news is 95% of the country, workers have a nice place to live near their home. The bad news is those are the 95% places that I don't want to live in. So you take the zip codes of the top 5% of the cities, and you look at the property appreciation rate. I live in 34236. I used to live in 34242, so that's the key. So you take that property appreciation rate and you multiply it by the number of years that has been sustained. And then you multiply that by American Disability Act's rules, zoning rules, regulations, impact fees, and the higher the equation, the fewer number of places for the workers. So what happens? In Asheville and Aspen, in Sarasota, the workers drive an hour to get to their jobs, clogging up the roads, parking in the customers' parking places. And what does our city commission do about it? Nothing. That's all they do, nothing. I'm not a critic. I have solutions. They have ignored my solutions. I've been training my whole life for this position. The other candidates say they want to give back. Well, I've been the president of the Easter Seal Foundation. I've been served on the board of the United Way. I've served on the board of Boys and Girls Club. I have personally been responsible for over $3.5 million in grants to local not-for-profits for at-risk youth in the city of Sarasota. I bought my first house in the city. I raised my family in the city. I ran a business in the city. I'm a city guy. My dad was a city commissioner. I grew up, and I have been taught by fine people like Christy Payne and Dr. Wyndham. Okay, I'm well trained. I've trained my whole life for this position. Oh, no question about it. We're going to build 2,000 apartments. We're going to use the same high net worth investor that created the problem of the gentrification to solve the problem. We're going to use their money. We're going to create a housing trust where non-compensated trustees, including the city manager and the Sarasota Housing Authority head, will serve, and we will have a beginning of the solution for the problem, which is get people out of their cars, get them on their bikes, get them in buses, and that's what has to happen. Here's the question I have for everybody. You've got families struggling paying rent, and now you're going to design an apartment complex for them to live at. How much more should every tenant have to pay every month so that you're compliant with every existing rule and regulation? What number are you cool with? So obviously we're going to do everything we can to accommodate handicapped people on the first floor. But the idea that I've got to design a place so that somebody can get their friend in a wheelchair to the 4th floor and everyone in the building has to pay for that, I think that we can change that. We have Bill Russell from Sarasota Housing Authority working with Dr. Carson in Washington. We need to change these rules. We need to change the statutes. I had to go through an eviction process. I said to Judge Goldman, do you realize your role in this? And she didn't like that because she does realize. It's Joe Gruters and our legislators have to change. It's impossible to be a landlord. And the tenants in Florida beat you up. And so we wonder why there's no affordable housing. I don't believe there's one community in the country that has solved this problem. Mm-hmm. The ones that have solved it are the 95% of the zip codes that don't have the problem. There's no one solving it. I go to Asheville. I went to prep school at Aspen. If Sarasota can't solve a problem with all our money and all our experience, no, it can't be solved. No one has solved the homeless problem. We can solve that, and we can solve the affordable, but no, we have to do it. No one else has done it. Here's a perfect example of the incompetence of our existing city commissioners. Go to South Beach or Siesta Key, and there's all kinds of cool methods of getting around downtown where the city doesn't subsidize it. So what does our city do? They have some pretty electric carts. And you know, electric, like you don't use energy to make the electricity. I haven't quite figured that out. So they spent $365,000 of our money when they could have spent nothing. I think if you go to South Beach and you see these great looking people with rickshaws, I like that. When Nora Patterson said on the city commission, the Madison site is city owned right now, and he gets a sweetheart of a deal for whatever reason, I don't know. And I presented the idea of a bicycle station at that site, which I will do if I'm elected, and kick Mr. Madison out. There's plenty of places for the high net worth people to drink downtown. They really don't need the city to rent them a place. That they didn't even think about that bicycle station. It wasn't even an idea, you know, it wasn't even in their little minds because they drive their cars. Everybody drives their cars to the city commission meeting. I don't think these people ride their bikes recreationally. So what would they know about bicyclists? The way the roads are designed in the city to kill bicyclists with pretty little medians in the middle, insanity. Sarasota has been, we have a terrible distinction. The county has the #1 beach. We're also one of the most dangerous cities in the planet for pedestrians and bicyclists. So what does our city commission do? Nothing. Nothing. The stop people, I think, are absolutely hilarious. They're going to be partying at the rooftop Westin at the View. And their friends are going to tell them this is a beautiful building. And they're going to be embarrassed. They don't seem to have a problem with the butt-ugly parking garages in Rosemary District. I don't get it. Those are the ugliest buildings I've ever seen in my life. And the public can't go in a parking garage. So those are, they put those, and they don't want to stop that, but they want to stop a magnificent condominium because they don't like it. Too bad. The only way that you can provide public transportation is high density. So the only way you get people out of their cars is high density. If you don't like high density, move to another city. I want 5,000 apartments, not houses. Okay, no housing schemes for workers. So they don't have to drive their crummy cars or their crummy jobs parking in the customers' parking places. Bobby Jones, the city just paid $135,000 for another consultant. Oh my goodness. To tell them what to do. The newspaper business used to be the worst business in the country, but now the hedge funds seem to think it's pretty good, or they wouldn't have bought the Herald Tribune and traded it twice. So now golf and retail are the two worst businesses in the world. What does the city want to do about it? Hire a consultant. I think those golf courses make really fine parks, maybe a Frisbee golf park. I think they'd probably be home for another 3,000 apartments. Now we got 5,000 apartments in a housing trust with reasonable and probably 2,000 parking places for 5,000 homes, 10,000 people with 1,000 parking places. That's what I want. I was appalled. Dan Lobeck in his self-serving $400 an hour suit comes in there. Staff does a wonderful job. And the city commission throws the planning staff under the bus and tells them to go do their homework again because somebody pulled the little button in the cabin and they said, we don't like it. So what does the city do? They throw staff under the bus. Unbelievable. Everyone who runs a business knows it's your staff that makes it happen, okay? It's all about the hiring process. Of course I trust staff. They're good people. They know what they're doing. Um, 35 years I spent in the investment business. Tremendous focus on municipal debt. Moody's rating service says we have a $320 million pension deficit. That's almost twice our annual revenue. And because of the basic strength of the tax zone, the ratings people don't even downgrade the largest deficit that any city has, basically in the state of Florida. The rate of return and expectations on that portfolio look like Bernie Madoff. So I will use my expertise in the financial markets to eliminate that deficit. And they're only paying $4 million a year to service a $320 million deficit. And the stock market is up tremendously in the last 10 years. And where would this thing be if we had been continued and the Dow Jones wasn't 20,000? What if it was 10? What would the deficit be? What's the city going to do about it? Hire a consultant? The amount of emails, probably 75% of the city's business is not related to today. The number of emails that I get related to pension schemes, unbelievable. Unbelievable. You look at the other cities in the county of Sarasota, Longboat Key, whew, they didn't get it. They used an axe out there, okay? So did Northport. I'm totally supportive of the police officers' pensions, and I want the force increased by 40%. I want 50 new city of police officers on bicycles with EMT training and social work training. So I want the county to take over all of the items they can. I'd like Manatee County to take over the Sarasota Water and Sewer Department, which is miserably run, and the 16% increase to the customers. There's going to be 26,000 hookups they have monopoly power over, and they don't even know how to spell the name customer at the water department. The city picks up my garbage in the morning, and the county picks up my recycles in the afternoon. Wow. So we've got a city garbage worker, and then they're going to worry about the pension on the city garbage worker. You know, when I was a kid, there was a joke. How many utility workers does it take to dig a hole? And it was 2. The guy that dug it and his boss. Now it's 4. The consultant the city commission hired, the guy that digs the hole, his boss that watches him dig the hole, and then the inspector that inspects the hole. I believe that 90% of the employees of the city of Sarasota should work for Chief DePino. When we bulldoze City Hall and we build 200 apartments with no parking, by the way, there, that's the beginning. They talk to anyone in the building industry and they will tell you the city of Sarasota, they really enjoy nitpicking. The inspectors, the special rules. County can do all of those functions. The idea that we can't have a Kirkering or Barbario do the accounting is mind-boggling to me. They're still printing stuff out like it was 1975 there. They got more paper. They go through more paper in City Hall than I've ever seen in my life. It's absurd. You look at a business like Plymouth Harbor. They have similar revenue to the city of Sarasota. Do they have their own accounting department? No. And what happens when you put on an RFP for accounting and you don't like the work being done? You fire them and you get somebody else. There's a miserable company, Correctional Services, headquartered in Sarasota, and they make money off prisoners. There's one function the government can't privatize, and that's law enforcement. Chief DePino has already got a great police force. When we bump her budget up by 40% and she frees them out of those polyester suits, what's going to happen is we roll back the millage. Siesta Key is going to join the city of Sarasota. because the way they're now doing law enforcement with automobile-based law enforcement is a joke. Sure, you write a lot of tickets, generates a lot of revenue, but when I lived on Siesta Key, you can set your watch by these sheriffs driving around in their cars. They don't know the kids at the stop, at the bus stops. The only way that you can properly do law enforcement in a climate like this is on bicycles. Once the Siesta Key and Oyster Bay people see our superior force to what they're paying for in the county, they're going to want to join the city. Once we bulldoze City Hall and we don't have that symbol of bureaucracy and waste sitting there, they're going to want to join the city. They've been asked before, and there's not one person on the Key that would think about it until everybody works for Chief DePino. All street parking should be free. Right now, we generate about $365,000 a year in revenue off of 4,000 parking places, worth probably $80 million. That should generate $5 million a year. So what you do is you have street parking for free because everybody wants to park in front of the business. And then you have in the garages, after about 8 o'clock at night, charge absolutely as much as you can extract. Keep these young people from driving their cars into downtown and drinking and driving. Let them take Uber. They charge 20 bucks at South Beach. I think we ought to charge 20 bucks here. Those parking garages are where you make the money. You don't make them with meters on the street. That's absurd. It's absurd. They're a pain in the butt. Okay? Nobody's ever liked a parking meter in the history, and no one ever parks in a parking garage for free. Why? They must have spent $5 million on these parking garages. Oh, and how about that pretty $44 million parking garage on State Street? What are we competing for, the most expensive parking garage in the history of the planet? And then we don't charge people to park in there. Because what? Because they don't like paying for it? I don't like paying for parking either. So what? Totally opposed. When my father was city commission, what you did is you had a referendum and you asked the voters not to give you the money before they saw the merchandise, which is what they want now. And trust. Why should we trust them? What do they want to acquire? How much is it going to cost? Go ask the voters for the money. It's real simple. That's what Dad did. 90% of the people said, yeah, we'll vote for the acquisition of North Lido and South Lido. That's how you do it. I know more about this issue than anybody in town. I live in Gillespie Park. I moved out of my historic house 3 years ago so Harvard could move down here and do a study on housing first. I funded that study through the foundation I'm involved with. And they came up with stale stuff about housing first. Yale had already done it. Okay? It's a joke. What people don't realize is 24 years ago, the Sarasota Herald-Tribune did an editorial on the special exception that was given the Resurrection House on a 3-2 vote by the City Commission. And the Herald-Tribune editorial was well done. It said, are we helping or are we enabling? I asked Mr. Tryon to revisit that, but I guess he's too busy with his more important things that he worries about over there. So what we have is we have this perception that there's veterans out there on our streets. It turns out there's 49 rental vouchers, Section 8, waiting for veterans to take, but there's no veterans out on the street. So I will not use the H word. There's vagabonds who are being enabled at the Resurrection House and Salvation Army, and there are people in crisis that aren't lucky like me that have a credit card in my back pocket, and they're living out of cars, and they need housing. So when I listen to the city commission candidates talking about putting vagabonds in houses when we have families living in cars in crisis, that's who I worry about. The vagabonds, I really think that the city of Venice and Longboat Key and Northport and the county of Sarasota will invite the Resurrection House and the Salvation Army to do their good work in their backyard. That's what I think. People like special events. People who are moving to these $1 million condos like the idea of walking to special events. The more the merrier. They got to look at solutions. Okay? Who's got solutions? I'm not a critic. I got solutions to problems. If they want to continue with their consultants in the march for higher and higher rents, go for it. I'm moving to Asheville anyhow. This town is really bothering me. So I don't care. If they don't want a leader in there, then vote for these other people. Because there's a park at South Lido with my dad's name on it. I've got a niece raising her family here. My son would like to move back here, but he works at Walmart for $10.40 an hour, and he can't afford this town. So it's a battle. Either this community is going to stand up for the working person, and I stick around, or they're going to continue letting the privilege run the show, and I bolt.